Hi.
Hello.
This is Nikki.
And this is Ramona.
Welcome to
the Mental Health Hub.
So it's been a week.
Hey, it's been a week. It's God, man.
How have
it's
you been?
Let's just say ni God, manze. It's been a busy week. It's been good. And you, how has your week been?
It's been good. Assignments tu ndo nyingi.
Wanaitwa lecturers. Wanaitwa lecturers. Bora tusikue na mental cases. Because I remember my university life. You even sleep at 5 a.m. Hata uko unalala. Unakuta by 5 a.m. ndo umemaliza kazi. Kwanza hapo pa kuandika scripts. Anyway, that was it.
So today on this show, we are going to talk about suicide because September is Suicide Prevention Month.
Yes.
And the reason I think we want to talk about this topic is what happened over this week about the intern who committed suicide out of frustration.
Yeah.
That was a really sad case. I saw the story and I was like, people need to talk about suicide. People need awareness on suicide.
True, by the way. Because she gave her all and then she was not even paid for it. She was just mistreated. You know, even you reach a point, you're like, this person went through so much traumatic experiences. You see people with blood, you see people, and then imagine it's surgery. So you can imagine seeing all that and then you're told you're not going to be paid or you're just mistreated.
I'm going to say this. I did my internship in data technician in a specific hospital for, I think, 6-7 months. And I'm going to tell you, working in the medical field, whether you're an intern, whether you're a professional, is not going to be easy. Because you're going to see blood. You're going to see people dying. You're going to see mothers bringing kids into their worlds. You're going to see mothers who don't manage to meet their kids. But I think every profession... Iko hivyo. Kila profession iko na difficulties zake.
Speaking of profession, well, let me tell you mine. Or let me just say Mwangi because I've mentioned mine a couple of times. I remember there was also... I was an intern at that point. You can imagine waking up at 3:30 a.m. and you're going to a media house because at that time I was an intern as a sound technician. So you can imagine at 3:30 you wake up and then a vehicle just comes to pick you. Then now the media vehicle comes to pick you. Mmesukumana. Alafu sijui, mmesukumana. Ndio usingizi. And then you arrive at that work at 6 because you have to keep collecting people for you.
That's
you have
3 hours on the road.
I know. And then you have to leave at work at, let's say, 10 p.m. So by the time you are in town, it's, let's say, 10:30 or even 11.
So they don't drop you off home.
Imagine kunyima. No, they drop us in town because at that point it's quite tricky. It was in Upper Hill. So that part of Siku, it's quite tricky. So they used to drop us off in town because town was a bit safer. Especially for me now, I had to take a loafer because the matatus I used to take in our Suku, they were not, past 9, they're not usually available. Here, napanda gari inaja. Na by the time it's inaja, it's like almost 11:30. So kwa nyumba unafika kitu 12.
So you sleep for less than 2 hours.
And let me tell you, that's just the shift that ends at 10. Friday and Saturday, shifts used to end at 1 a.m. So imagine, mnaenda na hiyo gari, mmefinyana, then all of a sudden, yani mnashukishwa kila mahali, and then you arrive at home at 3 a.m. Yani saa 9:30 karibu saa 10. Alafu unakuja kuniambia utanilipa tu fare. Unanipatia 750 kwa week. That time I felt like I was depressed. And imagine you gave your all to that company. Imagine umeenda full shift. Unavumilia baridi. Because now in the gallery, in the control room, there has to be AC so that the machine doesn't react or something. Was it freezing or boiling? I can't remember what it happens, but you have to freeze it in order for it to remain cool, you know? So you can imagine umevumilia AC, lunch is on you and it's Upper Hill. The cheapest lunch you can afford is 150 ama 200. So you can imagine lunch is on you, fare is on you. Hey.
Anyway, I think a lot of people, before you actually get to that professional level where you're paid, we actually go through a lot.
We go through a lot. Me, I reached a point, and then each and every person quit. So I was the only sound engineer. Then nikasema, mimi nijipe stress kanani. I told the boss, me, I can't. I even didn't stay a year. Imagine 8 months, let's say 3 months for the internship, and then the other 5 months umefanya job. Kidhani utapewa salary, utapewa nia tunavumilia.
Wait, the 5 months you're still getting paid like an intern?
Well, I tell you, it's that bad. It was that bad. Ikafika tu mahali. I just told him the truth, like, I'm not being paid. I feel like I'm not being valued. And then you find the co-stars and the stars. Mtu anakuja 1 hour, sijui 2 hours. Lakini pesa ya pay bill atapatiwa sijui like maybe 5%. So roughly anatoka na 5K ama 10K hapo. Depending on how much they have raised that nini.
That day.
So imagine, unakuja, wewe umekuja masaa yako mawili moja umelipwa 5K. Wewe mwenye umevumilia kutoka sijui 6 a.m. to let's say 10 p.m. or 1 a.m. Unalipwa peanuts. There's a point we even had to go and ask for that favor ya kulipwa nini. Nitaje? Kupewa percentage ya pay bill. Tuliambiwa they'll communicate to us. They never did. So I told myself, you know what? I'm not going to kill myself. And it reached a point I was like, you know, ama nitoke hii dunia juu kweli hakuna kazi ama nini. So I just started to leave. Because at this point akili ilikuwa inagonga suicide. But then I was like, there's no need. It was quite tough. And that's what I say, like, you can even empathize with people who go through that. Internship, unaenda, unakosa kulipwa. And then there's a guy from Nation Media writes about those things because many interns are not usually paid. They're not valued. Ama unakuta atiwe ndio. Na sasa uko na degree yako. Atiwe ni mtu wa kubeba chai. Surely. Coffee guy. Kwani hiyo kazi yako? Kuna watu wa cafeteria wanafaa kuleta chai.
Very true.
Ati niletea chai.
Just because you're the newbie.
Surely. Ama unamboka huko nyuma uangalie. And they're not even teaching you. It was... Interns do go through a lot. And that one made me feel enyewe. That was quite brutal because... Unimagine one damu.
We lost a very bright person because I can imagine, doctor, you've gone to school for 7 years. And then you get to a point where you're like, this is not for me. So for suicide, we can, let's discuss like the causes of suicide. Like, why do people commit suicide? What brings someone to suicide? Because I know at some point in life, I've gotten to that place where I was like, I don't want to die, but I want to hurt myself so bad.
Right.
And I remember
self-sabotage.
Mine was not even self-sabotage. Mine was, I wanted to cut up myself. Like, if I cut up myself bad enough, I'll bleed to death. And I remember at that point, I realized something. I actually called a friend of mine. I was like, hey, this and this is going on. And they showed up. And I know, and I can say, if they never showed up, it would have been a different story today. Sure. Because I think the problem is a lot of us in this generation, you don't feel comfortable enough to go to your friend and be like, hey, Ramona, I'm going through this and this.
Watch out, a friend. Parent.
Let me say this. I love my family. I love my family so much. And they are the most supportive people God gave me. But there's a reason I created a support group of my friends. Because as much as unapenda mzazi, African parents will always be African parents.
True.
African parents, hata kama mzazi wako anakupendaje, African parents will always be African parents. Utaona kama mzazi wako anataka kukufa, ile kamba kutapewa, you'll just be like,
kamba kama ni kofi. Unaanzia kwanza na kofi. Yani, ni ujinga gani yo umeanzia? Kwani ni wewe peke yako unapitia mashida? Tunataka kujua. Hadi anaanza kukwambia hata mimi nilipitia, kwani nilikufa? Sikukufa. Yani you're being told that kind of nini ati ai. Sasa kosa kulipwa hapa ni you're like, we
actually people actually go through a lot.
And then they're not apologetic to that. They're like, sasa ama kasi coffee. You don't know when the next muiko or the next
slippers kapita na kichwa.
Hata umalizangi nataka kuju ati nini? Onge na sasa wameshachukua the other slipper.
Where the Bible says mna kugonga hii mpe hiyo ingine ya kugonga.
Sasa anasema
atakugonga hata ngoje umpe anakugonga ingine
ama Kenya anafanya akida these parents who do this anachukua rat anakuchukua anakuambia haya jue unataka kujua weka jue unajua how to...
That is called tough love. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So a lot of people, like when you read the statistics of suicide, like they get higher and sadder every year.
True.
And it gets to a point where you're like, a lot of people are actually, ukifika hapo point, yeah, this is not worth it. You have actually gone through a lot. Because for me, when I got to that point, I will be that point where you don't even know who you're going to talk to. Because kuna vitu napitia and you're like, how am I going to share this with my family? How am I going to share this with my friends? You know?
True.
So, unaweza pata, someone is going through shit. Someone is going through like
deep state.
Anapitia tu ile. And they call you as a friend and you're like, hey, let me call you back. And there's one thing I'll never do. No matter how busy I am, if my friend calls me and I know I'm busy, I'm just going to be like, I'll call you back. And I will call them back. Ama ukinipigia na siko busy, I'll pick your call na leo. Because I think the problem is a lot of us in this generation, we are so busy kutafuta do. We are so busy doing other things, we forget that we have people to check on. And I remember yesterday we were talking with someone and they were like, I think the reason connecting to TikTok streaks is because TikTok streaks are actually used. Kama, if you don't send me a streak, I'll be like, hey, why didn't you send me a streak today? We are keeping the streak ups, you know? So that makes sure that you'll always check up on your friends. But this ideology of like, you don't know what the person is going through. Because me, I remember when I was going through it, I cut off a lot of people. And very few friends of mine actually realized where something is wrong with her.
Wrong, yeah.
Let me call her, let me check up on her. But if people don't do that, me, if you don't talk to me, I'll be like, ako sawa. There are friends of mine who are like, who has proposed the whole week, I'll be concerned. But has proposed the whole month, I won't be concerned because I know that is their personality. So sometimes you don't have to be like, oh, we're not that close. Just check on the behaviors. So you cannot like someone is suicidal, you just say the behaviors. Like, hey, I'm closed off. This guy is not talking to me the way he used to talk to me. This person is actually more angry, more depressed, more cut off from the world. And when you see your friend get to that point, like, just sit them down and be like, you don't want to talk about it, but I'm here. You know, adile dhoti ya kujua, oh, this person is here for me. Because I remember when I called that friend of mine, that's when I expected her to show up. But when you show up, I was like, yo, so I actually have people who care about me. True. Point here. Yo, actually have somebody who would actually show up for me when I'm going through this.
I don't know if it's just me, but I think I'm also like you. When I am going through something, I completely cut people off. I self-sabotage by pouring my frustrations on people, which again is not right. Hey, at least
it's not right.
Hey, it's not. It reached a point it became so intense. And then I have these trust issues kind of thing. I'm like, I'm going through things and then that just self-sabotage and then you start to feel like ama watu pia si marafiki wazuri juu no. But you can't. But something I came to learn, you can't expect your friends to just know what you're going through. They'll assume you're okay. So ukiwa cut off, so watafikiria you don't want to be friends anymore. And it's actually, but then unakuja kufeel vibaya, maybe wakifanya vitu bila wewe, you're like, oh, they are fake friends, you are right all along. But sometimes it's a you thing, like maybe wewe ndo ulifanya kitu ikawa trigger wakuwe hivyo. I came to realize that sadly, like whenever I'm going through things, I shut myself out from people. I become so unfriendly, sometimes hostile. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want people to disturb me and stuff. And then unafeel mtu akikuuliza kitu unaona nikaa napeleleza. But at the same time, you also want that person akuulize. Yeah, it's quite complicated, but it's not usually a good thing, by the way, because you end up hurting somebody who maybe is genuinely concerned about you in their own way. So unaona, hey, it's actually a very bad thing because you erupting and self-sabotaging makes you lose a lot of friends. But then again, sometimes friends, rafiki in Swahili, those people can make you
make you go mad.
Hey.
I say, me inajambianga kitu. You say there's this term, fake friends. I don't believe in fake friends. And I remember there's someone who usually told me, akunanga watu kama fake friends. They have been your enemies all along.
Yes. It's
they just
that
didn't show who they were. But some were opportunity. They're not fake friends. They're just been enemies. And mimi kakuna maombi na ombanga. I always tell God,
right,
help me say those fake friends, those agents of the devil sent into my life.
Enemies of progress.
Those are the people who will push you to a point you're depressed. Na badala ya kusaidie, this person is just like anakukanyangia tu chini, you get like they don't even try to be like, hey, you're going through this, let me help you up. Again, yes. And so I usually say something. September being like a suicide prevention month. This whole month people should actually sit down and have a conversation about suicide.
True.
And one thing about suicide is it can be passed. Unaweza kupata some, I don't know if I'm going to call it a generational curse or a
ancestral
karma. But unapatanga maybe in this family, this committed suicide, someone else is going to do the same. And it's a really sad thing, like sitting down and being like, I can even actually imagine going, and I remember when I was in high school, a friend of mine committed suicide. I never went to the burial. We were not even that close. But I remember I saw how it affected people in the community. People were like, sasa mbona alikuwa anajua? You know, because people don't actually understand, like suicide is actually a mental thing. Like, ili ufike yo point ya, nitajua. You sit down the first time and you're like, nitajua.
And then there's
the planning you go through, nitajua na kamba, nitajikata, nitakunywa rat. Going through with it actually, that whole process, kuna watu walikuwa around yeye, but they didn't notice that, you know, because people usually like, they're just going through it. But have you sat down and been with friends and be like, what are you actually going through?
Yeah, people should stop that ego, by the way. Alafu that judgment ati, sasa alikuwa najua. Kwanza, what? Ati,
sasa alikuwa najua. Unajua kwanza nasemanga.
Mama wa kijiji.
Nasema kitu. I usually say this. Yes, you'll go to Baruza and people like, sasa alikuwa najua mbona. You know, that statement, someone in the family, someone close to that person has that statement. Triggered. Yes. And they'll be triggered. You know, and that's why Manga, if someone committed suicide, sit down with the family, sit down with the friends, be like, hey, this happened. How are we going to make sure that it's not going to happen to any of us again? You know?
Yes.
Create a support group for your friends. Me, I always tell my friends, you have a problem. I don't like calls. I usually people don't call me unless it's an emergency. So do this. If you're going through it, text me. I'm always online. Doesn't matter where I am. Na kwangu ukipata siku online, either nimetoka kwa nyumba na nimeenda kwa duka na narudi, but most of the time utanipata niko online. So I always tell my friends, you're going through it, text me and then I will call you, we will talk about it, we're going to find a solution to it, because no matter what you're going through, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. There's always a solution on the other side. True.
It's like, even I usually don't like this when people compare other people's problems. Ati sa hiyo ni shida inatoshana aje, like to you it's a small problem, but to someone else it's not. That is something maybe ameishi kustruggle nayo, but unakuta mtu out of nowhere, hiyo ni kitu kidogo. Ama family sometimes, sasa hiyo ndio inakufanya utake kujiua. Ama unakuta even the community, sasa hiyo ndio ilifanya ajiue. Si angevumilia tu. Ama hizi vitu si zinakuanga maisha, like to you, do you know that's the reason why even most of your kids even want to kill themselves? Or even you find that when you are like, when those parents get old, wanawapeleka wapi? Home of the elderly. It's so bad. I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
But
unakutanga sometimes they even take them there because maybe throughout their kids' lives they have been toxic.
Yeah.
Or okay, kuna wengine wanachanga huko juu, you know, there are those who don't care about their parents. But kuna wengine wanapelekwa huko cause yenyewe ule amekuwa toxic. Or pia saa zingine you're not, hauna ile enough funds maybe ya kuketa for maybe those kwao na nini, so unaona umpeleke home for the elderly, which is easier. But then sometimes parents need to see that sometimes they can be the root cause of someone else's what? Trauma.
You've been depressed, and like I was saying, there are a lot of people who commit suicide because before you commit suicide, you have to be you're going to have to get depressed first.
True.
Now before you get depression, you've gone through stress. You've gone through the stress of it, stress of losing your job, stress of losing a loved one. Like they were saying, people commit suicide because of love, and I laughed at it because.
Okay,
I know I'm not supposed to laugh at that fact, but unajua najiambianga
heartbreak.
Nakupenda. I love him. I'm a lover girl. I love love. But let me tell you something. Ikifika mahali najua juu ya mapenzi. I'm not.
If you want to talk directly.
I am not judging. But if you ever get to a point where you're like, I want to commit suicide. Like that first thought that comes to your head, and you're like, oh God, I want to die. Like I'm losing hope. I don't know. When you get to that point, like call your friends and be like, hey, I'm going through this. It doesn't mean I'm a yapper. Even my friends tell me, I'm a certified yap. Me yap. And I'll call my friends. I'll be like, I'll just yap. Because for me, that's enough.
Then your friends are like,
I have a friend of mine who's like, Aya. So kopoa, I end up kupigia kesho.
So.
And that is it. Yeah. Sometimes, and I remember there's a time I used to have a friend of mine when angenipigia simu and he should cry for 30 minutes. Just umechukua simu mtu analia tu. I would leave the phone there, I would let her cry. Akimaliza kulia, anakata simu. I didn't even ask her what the problem was until she was ready to open up. Because sometimes, as much as someone is going through like your process, depression, you get to a point where suicide thoughts, and you have those friends when unajua wezi pigia simu akusikize, and you're like, what's there to live for?
True.
And that's what I always tell people, sit down, have a list of why am I living? What are my goals in future? What are my ambitions? Because if you go point here, oh God, I don't think I want to do this anymore. Go back to your list. Nini kwa hii list sijafanya. Work on that. That's going to give you a goal. You know, when you have suicide thoughts and you look for something like something to do, it could distract from that point, and you'll be like, oh, I'm going to keep myself occupied with this. I'm going to work on this. And that's how I'm going to get through it. By the time unamaliza your project, another project will be like,
inakuja kwa akili,
this was fun. Let me do this. Like have a goal, have ambitions. But sometimes as much as people have goals and ambitions, and you get to that point where you're like, I'm literally tired, you're still going to do it.
Also, another thing I also learned, apart from peer depression and stuff, people really underestimate this, and people think that umechizi ama uko na makasiriko tu. Something we call bipolar.
Yeah.
There's this disorder called bipolar. I think there's bipolar 1.
There's bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. Yeah. No, 1 and 2.
1 and 2, right?
Yeah, there's bipolar 1
and I think 1 is
2.
the one that is now the extreme one. Is it the extreme one to a point that you even develop suicide thoughts? Like you think everyone is against you. Like I used to know someone alikuwa hivo. There's a time in my graduation party last year that person alikuwa unaona this minute ametulia, then the next minute ndo huyo
like they're called maniac episodes.
So at first I was like, God, I'm scared to talk to this person because sorry, me where me and my friends were
you don't know what they're thinking.
Like all of a sudden amekutusi na ujuni amekutusi kidogo, I'm sorry. The next minute you can't tell me. The next is hadi niko okay. I used to see him even in the supermarket. Nilikuwa na behepa. But then nikafika mali nikaona nielewe. Some things zinakuwa sometimes genetic. Like the mental disorders. Sometimes
there are mental disorders that are genetic.
Genetic, like you're bipolar. Or sometimes maybe there's a childhood trauma that will trigger that kind of aspect. And then you find those people, they are very angry. They suffer from a lot of pain. So wanaona the best when you will lash out. And they fear sometimes being judged, like based on that. Like unakuta hawataki kusema vitu zao na nini. Like they're afraid that people will judge them, that wao wamechizi, wako na makasiriko. But I like the way certain celebrities, they came out and said that they suffer from that. Like Demi Lovato, Chris Brown, and Kanye West. It's something that niliona, first of all, it takes courage to actually open up
and be like, hey, I'm going through this. The problem is a lot of people have not understood about
it, and they're not even aware.
Health. They're not aware about mental health and mental disorders. So to see someone who is like a celebrity, a content creator, an influencer, and there's a TikToker who, I don't remember her name, but I know she has that disorder. But the problem with a lot of people don't accept that, like, oh, ule nikucheze amecheze. No, that's schizophrenia. That one is going through it. No, maybe it's depression that person is going through. Maybe that person is going through a mental health. And the problem that people
but you're not even solving
don't understand mental health. The problem is zaka chini mtu mwambia, let's talk about suicide, and they're like, sasa ndani ongelea nini kuhusu kujua na mimi sijijua. And then I sat down with somebody to have a conversation about suicide. That person just asked me, sasa generation yenyu. You're so Gen soft, Gen Z's. You're so soft. That's why you think the solution to everything is suicide.
You're like, stop saying that. The world is revolving.
But then I was just like, can we just change the topic? Because sitting down with somebody who is illiterate.
True.
Illiterate.
No, call them out. Me sit a filter. That is illiteracy.
Sitting down with somebody who doesn't understand mental health and being like, September, the whole of September, people should talk about suicide, should create awareness about suicide.
True.
And you'll be like, sasa nini mnataka kuongelea kuhusu kujua? Kukufa tutakufa. Just accept that. Stop like rushing your time. But before you mtu afike hapo kwa kujua, and the worst thing is there's bullying. People bully you.
Right.
You get bullied for who you are. You get bullied in the internet. You get bullied for everything.
Kwanza cyberbullying. That thing has...
That's the worst.
Actually, cyberbullying is the number one cause.
And
trolling and stalking. Stalking and cyberbullying. And sana it's those people that stalk. Those wanasimanga anaitanga psychopath. Like unakuta mtu anakustalk, unakuta maybe ulimfanyia kitu so anakukujia, anakucyberbully, like anakucyberbully. So unakutanga cyberbullying ndio inakuanga one of the number one causes right now ya suicide. And generation ya nini hawasemangi hivyo. Wanajitanga millennials. They don't say Gen X. Hawasemangi hivyo because they don't understand. They say we are soft, but they don't understand something as but unajua ni internet, so everyone
is
kila
gonna say that
comment.
Everybody is gonna say that. Exactly. And everybody is gonna judge, And a lot of people have not learned how to deal with the judgments that come, You have not learned how to be like, oh, this is going on. How am I going to deal with it? A lot of people have not been able to deal with that negative energy and negative noise that comes around them. So that's really hard. Also, unapatanga, you're frustrated. Your career is not going anywhere. You've been stagnant in your career. You've been stagnant in your relationship. You've been stagnant in your finances.
Right.
Alafu unasikia mtu. Sasa unajua juu ya nini?
You're just being lazy.
Lazy. Have you walked these streets looking for a job so that you can know the meaning of lazy?
Hapo unajaribu hapo ndipo nasema call me bipolar, call me whatever. Hapo. I don't know how the mouth will flare, but at some point that is very bad. That one I'll literally put you in your place.
Yeah, and like, that's why if you have a family who are like, if things get hard, come back home. Appreciate God for that. Because not a lot of families are like that. A lot of families are like, ulela Nairobi kutafuta kazi ama ulela Nairobi kusoma. Sindo, you're in Nairobi to study. Once you finish school, they start expecting
you get a job.
Shule, so tafuta kazi wanze kutusupport,
Family.
How do you know hivyo? And now in your head, you're like, okay, I've graduated. Nitaenda kazi wapi?
Ama unaambiwa, uko 35. Bado unaishi kwangu, haupati kazi.
Hujaolewa. The worst part about suicide is most of the things that push people to do suicides are societal expectations. Unajua, zile expectations are, by this age you should be married, by this age you should have kids, by this age you're not supposed to be a mom. You those expect, and that's why I don't like them. I don't like societal expectations because societal expectations what they'll do is they'll put for you a goal that unafika your age uko like, yo, how am I supposed to get there? How am I supposed so unasikia like your parent is like, me I was a millionaire by 24.
So to do, that is you. That's
so
not
you're
me.
telling me because you're my parent, you want me to become a millionaire by 22. The time you grew up in, the time you invested is not the same. Na akili yako na yangu haifanani, And that's why the one thing I always tell people is when people talk about suicide, talk about societal expectations. Tell people those expectations, they don't really matter.
Another thing,
where we set goals zako and be like, these are my goals. Whatever society says about it doesn't affect me in any way.
Other causes or types of people that cause other people to either be bipolar or even suicidal. There are people we call narcissists. people who damage you emotionally, psychologically, or even spiritually. Those people can make you commit suicide, and they embarrass you in the name of truth. They embarrass you to be something, ama they try to humiliate you to be something like them in order for them to come to your rescue. But it's not actually that. Hey, there are those people that they do trigger those kinds of suicide thoughts and stuff. And then they go about telling people, I tried to help her, oh, this and this and this. And that person doesn't know, maybe yendi alikuwa the cause and stuff. But me, I came to realize that be sensitive to people's feelings. But even at some point, speaking of narcissism, I'll say even there are parents that are like that, like narcissistic, and they don't like admitting it. Yeah. And their friends that are like that, they don't like admitting it. Like sometimes they gaslight, they blame shift, and something they call guilt tripping. Yeah. Yes. And then they make you like be dependent on them and stuff, so that in the moment they now evil. Hey, you start from now, that is total depression. That is now total. You think you reach a point you're like, you know what?
It's not worth it.
And stuff, it's not worth it. But then you let that person win. And then you even spiritually you start becoming drained, like una feel too apana. There's something going on, and then you feel unaanza di kukonda, una lose weight and stuff. But yeah, for me those I'll say are one of those causes: the bipolar one, the depression, or even narcissism,
mental issues,
yes,
frustrations, depression,
relationships like with family and stuff. Hapo nipo narcissism inaingia. You're like, you know what? I can't afford to be gaslit like this and this and this.
And just I always hear people say, oh, kaka kwa mzazi is rent-free, but it's costing me my mental health.
True.
And sometimes people take it as a joke, but in my head, I'm usually like, if it's draining you, leave. Because it will first drain you physically. Then it will drain you emotionally. And then mentally. No. Yeah. Ukishafika point mentally, that's when
spiritually.
Spiritually, that's when you start getting like this sorts of, where am I living? Why am I doing this anymore? You know, and you start getting suicidal. And I think staying with your parents, I don't think a lot of parents are open to that idea of, let's talk about suicide, let's talk about mental health, I want to go to therapy. You know, a lot of parents I don't think are open to that. So as much as people don't talk about suicide, as much as this is Prevention Month for suicide, we have to know, before tufike kwa hiyo point ya prevent suicide, before tufike kwa hiyo point ya suicide, what are the measures that people are going to take to be able to be like, I'm not going to be able to get suicidal thoughts, or if my suicidal thoughts come, this is what I'm going to do to prevent it. Because as much as we're having a conversation about suicide and the causes of suicide and the effects that suicide has on the community, what are the preventative measures that we as a generation, we as a community, we as friends and family can take to be like, we're going to do this to make sure we don't lose another one to suicide?
Okay, for me, I'll say one, there's therapy.
Yeah.
There's therapy in terms of music.
Yeah, there's different types of therapy.
Those music therapists. There's something about music. There's something about entertainment that calms the soul. Yeah. See, but I'm not saying you keep on putting earphones or headphones. Tafadhali, when I say therapy,
Ramona alisema.
But it's a habit I also need to stop, because where even may I put a lot of earphones? But there's something about music therapy. Like playing an instrument sometimes helps. Piano, the guitar, the
drums.
And sometimes even, you see, there's something about choir. You see, even church choir and stuff, that music calms your soul. So even they say that sometimes people have a lot of problems. They even feel like committing suicide, but they go to church to listen to that music. They want to feel better. But the most important one, seek God. Prayer.
Spirituality.
Prayer prevents a lot of things. Prayer and then music, but also music that applies for bipolar. They say bipolar kind of people. Actually, it helps them calm down. And sometimes drugs. This the name. This kind of recommended kind of drugs, like
when they call psychiatrist.
Exactly.
You go to the psychiatrist, they give you meds on how
And
but that is for depression.
Yes. No, it can even, because sometimes it can, ama pia the bipolar kind of, there's that treatment yenye una nini kidogo. And then pia inaita group therapy.
Yeah.
The group therapy sometimes helps because you find a group that doesn't judge you. And then there's a therapist ako, so unaongea unajikuta unafanya hata activities. Now that brings me to charity. Sometimes even charity helps to avoid suicide thoughts and stuff. Like you do something good to someone, you end up feeling good. And then you feel better. For me, those are the things I can say. Like kunini ku prevent hizi suicide and stuff na nini. Na pia ukiwa na hizo thoughts, just speak to someone and stuff. Ama pray about it. Prayer works miracles. Yeah, and you, what do you think?
I would have said creating a support system. I always support people having, as much as you have family that is supportive, have your own friends. Create your own friends and family. You know, when you unajua, if I call on this person, hata kama watajibu swali, they're gonna text me. Hata kama they don't answer the call, they're gonna get back to me. You know, have that support system in your no matter what happens, this person is gonna be here for me.
True.
Because that will really help you a lot. Because if you get a point and you're having suicidal thoughts and you know you can call on them and they're gonna be there for you, that's a really, really nice way to prevent suicide. Also, journaling, like journaling about your feelings, like when you're having a bad day, sit down, write about it.
True.
Because that way you get a way to express your feelings in another way. Like, you get a way to put down your feelings and express them. Because a lot of people might not afford kwenda. Okay, also you can go to therapy if you can afford it.
True.
But I've talked to people who are like, why would I pay that amount of money to go to a therapist? And iyo pesa nikifanya na kitu ingine, I can do much better with it, you know? So if you cannot afford to go to therapy, sit down, pray about it, journal about those bad days, you know? Because at some point, as much as you're journaling, and also there's something we call, it's not called thought stopping. Yeah, it's called thought stopping. So thought stopping is where you write, you're having negative thoughts, write them down and then counter them. So it's like a pros and cons list. So this side you write the negative thoughts, this side you write the positive thoughts. So every time the negative thought come out, like, I don't like this, like, I feel like killing myself, or I don't have hope for the future. This other side, I'm hopeful for the future because of this. So every time you get this negative suicidal thought, counter it with something positive. The more you do that, the more the negative energy will start going away, and you'll start getting and bringing positive energy into your life. Like, oh, now I'm actually excited to live. Now I'm actually excited to get this. And also, like I said, write a list of your goals and ambitions and the projects you want to do. Because whenever having those suicidal thoughts go through that, you can be like, oh, I wanted to do this before I die. So mbona nijue kama sijafanya hii, go do it. It might be hard. It's gonna be hard to get out of that. Sema ni rock bottom. Yo yenye umefika rock bottom yenye you're going through the worst of it. You don't have anyone to talk to. Keep yourself busy. It doesn't have to be an expensive project. True. It can have, unaweza kuwa menza project ya, there's something called 75 easy challenge and 75 hard challenge. Go Google about it. Do that project. Look for a gym. Go exercise. Yes. Meditate. There's something called art therapy. Some of us are bad artists, me included. I don't know how to draw. But there's something.
Wadu unakuwa colorblind, una paint hivi. Ujue unamwaga tu paint tu.
There's something called art therapy. Go to that. There are institutions that offer free, like they show art for free. Google about those institutions.
Yes.
Go and see the art and the gallery. Unajua, like, keep yourself busy with something else, because if you keep yourself busy with something, it means you're going to stop having those negative thoughts, because an idle mind is the devil's workshop. Yeah.
Usikubali shetani kwa maisha yako. Please.
Do not. Just pray.
Do not. So yes, as in, suicide is quite bad. And then again, pia the other prevention thing ni educate people,
create awareness on suicide.
Creation of awareness against such things. Kama people don't understand depression. Some people don't understand depression. They don't understand different kind of mental disorders like bipolar, by what?
Bipolar, schizophrenia.
Exactly. Narcissism.
Yeah.
And also borderline. Yani wanaona huyu amechizi, sijui ana behave aje. You know, like they're not aware of that. But if they're trained to that, at least they'll know how to conquer that. and wache hiyo discrimination and stigmatization. Even there are people wenye wanakuanga wagonjwa. Like pia sometimes diseases do cause, but pia wao wanafaa kupelekwa nini? Wanafaa kupelekwa counseling and stuff. Yeah.
So as we wrap up, if somebody out there is going through having suicidal thoughts, what is your advice to them? What would you be like, this is what you need to do? So what would you tell them?
First, ningesema maombi. Omba tu. Nini kakikuingia tu ati please pray. Pray. It's understandable to have those thoughts. We are human. But omba tu. Au kaushaito katoke. Because the people you leave behind watafeel vibaya. Look at your family. Your family will be the most affected, especially your parents and even your siblings, your friends as well. So sit down and see that there are people that give you that reason to live and just seek help. Yes. Okay. And you?
Pray. Journal. Write down those feelings. Counter affirmations. You can say affirmations once in a while.
Yeah.
Also create a support system. Kwanza hiyo ni important sana. Creating a support system that actually support you. Si create support system ya sasa niko na depression, tuende tukapigete hii. Create a support system of people will be like, hey, I'm going through this. Let's sit down and pray. Or I'm coming to fanye kitu una like. Yeah. So I think
that's it.
That's it for today. Bye. See you next time. Bye-bye. And that's all.
Voila, tuonane ni Tuesday.